I think it's Quentin Tarantino who said, "A good story is not told, it is revealed." I agree. And that's why on story structure, I got notes. Yeah, story structure. So, what I want to talk about is relative to screenwriting, writing novels, writing plays, and writing songs for a reason that's going to be obvious a little later in that episode. But I might mostly use language that's screenwriting oriented because this is what I've been doing the most these days in terms of writing. So, yeah, Tarantino said that, and I agree. And to me, we hear lots of crap about structure. You know, everybody needs to sell their new technique in their new book that knows everything about how to write a blockbuster or a best-selling novel. Of course, there's all that. To me, having been writing for 35 years now, starting age 7 by comic strips, before moving on at age 10 to short stories, then age 15, adding to the short stories the lyrics for the different bands I was a bass player or singer in. Then I wrote a novel at 20 years old. I had a proposal to publish it by a small publisher, but it was 6 months or a little more maybe after I had sent the manuscript to them. So I read that again, and I strongly felt that the first half was very clumsy. The second half had something that really worked in it. So I told them that I wanted to rewrite the first half and then see, but they were not game for that. And after that, I started to write screenplays while still doing other types of writing. And so that was at age 22, 20 years ago. I moved on to write quite a good amount of feature film screenplays. I shot with my production company 4 of them so far. I wrote a few plays and many songs. And so, what I learned from all that is that structure that truly matters and is efficient is 3-act structure, because we humans, it seems like we tend to need that number to register something, both to register something as an audience or a reader. Like, you know, the rifle is above the chimney. You see it once, someone mentions it, then later, and someone uses it a little bit a third time. Now you really register its presence. Now it means something. And also, when we focus on something, we seem to have this natural tendency, or cultural tendency, I don't know, but tendency, to need to break things down in threes. And maybe it's the main reason why the 3-act structure works, not for the audience or reader, but for the writer, so that you can have better grasp on the story that's trying to come alive through you. So yeah, 3-act structure, but why and how? What makes sense in an archetypal sense for writers and audiences is to both deal with external stakes and internal stakes. And you can just have what I call the yin yang structure. First half, for example, if you're making a genre film, the first half will be focused on external challenges, obstacle, stakes. And it's especially relevant, and it makes a lot of sense in movies, since cinema is very much an art of the protagonist versus their world. And then second half, if you're making a genre film, internal stakes can be the focus. And the last part, that can be very short or longer, by the way, it's the collision between the result of the whole act that was focused mainly on external obstacles and the other act that was focused mainly on internal obstacles. And why? Why? Well, why? This is going to be a why about a few things. Why am I saying that this works for genre films? Well, if you want to make a drama, you start with the first part that focuses on the internal stakes and obstacles, second, external stakes and obstacles, and then it collides. So why that for drama, and why the other way for genre? Because genre movies have lots of tropes. I don't mean that in a bad sense. They have a language that's very specific, and to be focused on a character versus their world allows you to do your world building, to show the language of the subgenre you belong to. Your story happens to be happening inside of, and then you dig deeper in your characters, having already established your whole world. When you do the opposite for a drama, it will create a sense that the inner demons of the character are spilling over his own or her own, their own mind, heart, psyche. It spills over from their inner world to the external world. And that is even more, it creates more drama and intensity. Of course, this is yin yang structure filmmaking, taiji filmmaking. So just the same as we can see in that symbol, there's a little bit of yin in the yang, there's a little bit of yang in the yin. There are external stakes that have to be dealt with in the more internal focused part, and there will be internal stakes that will have to be dealt with in the external focused part. And then there's the collision of all that. Whatever that led to needs to happen. That way, it helps you creating something that feels organic, as we say, that when you get through your movie to your finale, to your last act, the last act should be both familiar and surprising. That when the things happen, they feel like inevitable, but you didn't have the time to guess what was going to happen. This is what Robert McKee would call possibly archetypal storytelling versus stereotypical. It goes deeper. It feels like it comes from the depths of the character, that their inner world affects the external world, vice versa. And why does that work? Because I think that, first, this is true. This is how things work. What we cultivate inside ourselves will spill over to the people around you, to a whole world. And also, it creates a sense of a whole story being here as a direct product of the characters that inhabit it. So, it's not a complicated recipe that you will need to apply, and I'm the only one who holds the key to that. It's way simpler than that once you get the feel of it, and I can guide you through that, of course. But it's not something miraculous and very hard to attain, even though it might take time. I've been writing for 35 years. For someone who has 42 years of life experience, that's a lot, sure. But this is what I've discovered, and I can bring you there way, 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 way faster than, of course, my own trajectory was. But let's get back to talking structure. There's one more notion that I developed from music, because there's also one thing with people who feel inclined to tell stories. They tend to make connections between different ideas, different techniques, different aspects of life. Artists do that, and that's why it might speak to a lot of you, what I'm going to say. I write a story, a feature film, pretty much exactly as I write a song. A song, too, has moments where it's more internal and moments where it's more external. In a pop song, it's going to be verse versus chorus, for example. But there's also a notion in music that a song has a tempo, and let's say that this song is played on the bass guitar. The bass guitar riff will have a rhythm. I will explain that simply for people who are not musicians. A tempo will be, for a song, that's the tempo. The rhythm on that tempo will be so here the rhythm is more the pace is more brisk than the tempo, but you could have a song with a high tempo and a rhythm that's way more chill. Could be that. Okay. Well, do the same with your flicks, with your movies. Discover them, reveal your stories by trying to feel, do they have a brisk tempo or rhythm? Brisk tempo will be the scenes breathe, but the plot moves very fast from one scene to another. This is the character work and character growth will happen inside the breath, the space that is to be found in each scene. However, the opposite will be lots of things are happening inside of the characters during each scene, and the plot will move very steadily, step by step, small step by small step, from one scene to another. That you can decide on, but also, and I recommend, you can train yourself to feel what is your own tempo, because I tend to believe that everybody has their inner song that belongs to them and them alone, in a sense that when they share who they are with writing stories or with just being, they either have fast rhythm, slower tempo, fast tempo, slower rhythm. And of course, there's much more to that makes for how people are unique and alike at the same time. But it's one of the things. And I say, since everybody has a story to tell that is absolutely crucial to someone somewhere, and I don't believe in this. I know this to be true. Everybody, I advise, recommend to everybody to find their own way of telling that thing that burns so strongly inside them that they feel that they are the only one able to bring that story, that piece of inner music to the world, to be then passed on to us all, and so that we can all grow, learning from each other, learning from who we are in this world that needs every single one of us.